Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you here. My name is Kai No, Managing Director of Accurate Background here in Australia, and also your host today. I'm coming to you from Southwest Sydney on the lands of the Darug people in the Eora Nation. Firstly, thank you for being here on today's event. I know it's always tricky attending webinars, but today's event, Skyrocket Job Views and Connect to Top Grad Talent with a Killer EVP, I think it's going to be very helpful. We're going to take a deep dive into why a compelling employee value proposition isn't just HR jargon. It's your secret weapon in the war for talent. And at Accurate Background, we believe in turning every hire into a success story. That's why beyond our trusted global employment screening services, we're committed to empowering HR professionals with the latest insights to refine and enhance their recruitment strategies. We've got two wonderful guests with us today. First, we've got Mariam Hares, Director of People and Culture from the Sydney Children's Hospital Foundation, an amazing charity dedicated to supporting groundbreaking research and clinical services to improve the health and well-being of children. The foundation works tirelessly to ensure that every child has access to the best care whenever and wherever they need it. Following Mariam, we will have Lauren Howard, Engagement and Delivery Manager from Monash Talent, which is part of Monash University, Australia's largest university. Monash Talent specialises in connecting industry partners with the university's talented students and graduates, offering tailored recruitment solutions to meet the evolving needs of today's businesses and organisations. Both speakers bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to today's discussion on the importance and impact of a compelling EVP. Now, before I hand it over to our first speaker, Mariam, I'd just like to go through a few brief housekeeping points. During today's webinar, if you have any questions for the speakers, please drop them in the Q&A tab on Teams, and I'll put them to our guests after the presentation. So keep sending questions throughout if you've got them. We'll be recording the webinar, but it's Chatham House rules. So we'll be editing the video to blur out any names of participants. So, feel free and ask those questions and they'll be answered. In the weeks following the webinar, we'll also send out some materials, including a link to the recording and some links to Monash Talent's services, and also how you can donate and support Sydney Children's Hospital Foundation. And finally, just a note that this is part of an ongoing series that we'll be running at Accurate Australia. So we'll send you out an email afterwards so you can stay in touch with us if you want to attend future talks. Now, I'd like to welcome Mariam Hares, Sydney Children's Hospital Foundation, to take us on the journey through her organisation's experience with their development of the EVP and the lessons that she learned along the way. Mariam, thank you for joining us. Please take it away.
Thank you, Kai, for such a great welcome. Just share my screen really quickly. Okay, can you see the right screen? Great.
Yep.
Okay. So I'd like to begin by reintroducing myself. So I'm Mariam Hares, the Director of People and Culture here at Sydney Children's Hospitals Foundation, or SCHF for short. So you'll hear me say that acronym throughout the presentation. And today I really want to talk to you about how, our organisation, our mission is to ensure that all children get access to, as you just said, Kai, world-class healthcare whenever and wherever they need it. And to do that, we need to make sure that we have the right people working at all levels within our organisation. So unstoppable change makers who want to make a difference to the lives of sick children and their families. So what I will go through today is how we attract those people to our cause and keep them with us long term. So about something that's really exciting that I really hope will inspire each of you in your own roles, and that is an EVP. So what is an EVP? An EVP tells the story of your organization. It's who you are as an employer. And really importantly, it answers the question of, well, why should I work for you and not another organization? It marries the needs of an organization with the needs of the employees. And for us, it's a core part of our top line strategy and an extension of our brand. Now, in the not-for-profit space that we work within, we've seen new market trends emerging and quite a shift in what employees want out of their jobs. So the employment market has rapidly changed, and it's really, really hard to keep up, which I'm sure a lot of the P&C professionals here today can agree with. Employee priorities have been changing just as quickly as the employment market. And now there's such an increased focus on flexibility, culture, well-being, and purpose. So naturally, this has meant that the elements of a traditional EVP has to shift as well. Now, traditionally, EVPs focused on 5 key elements, which were compensation, so benefits and perks and time off and holidays, career development, the culture, and the company itself, so the reputation of the organization. And now these components still have their place in an EVP, but they've really grown and developed and evolved. So now we see things like connection and belonging taking center stage in EVPs. We look at flexibility, not just in terms of where work is conducted, but how it's conducted. And there's a much greater desire for employee autonomy. And growth is not just about career development. So it goes beyond career development within their role, within their organization that employees are at. Employees actually now see it as the employer's responsibility to support their growth beyond the organization that they work for and their current role. And then well-being. So since COVID, we've seen a monumental difference in the way employees and employers approach well-being. So there's no blanket approach either. So well-being is different to everyone, and contemporary EVPs really embrace this. So it's all about allowing employees to drive their own well-being journey and personalize their well-being. So employers are now supporting more sustainable working norms. Meaningful work and working for a purpose or a cause has become a strong driver for job changes. People over COVID, as I'm sure many can reflect on here too, have really reconsidered and are reflecting on the why of the work that they're doing and all the efforts they're putting in. They're seeking a deeper emotional purpose for their jobs. So as an organization now, our job was to take our lessons from the market and from our own employees to create an employee value proposition that really aligned with our new brand and our organizational strategy. So we have an ambitious vision to change the landscape of pediatric health through our fundraising. And we know that we will only succeed by having the best people on board who are committed to our mission and going all in for kids' health. At SCHF, we're also in a growth phase. So recruiting top talent is a priority for our success. And we needed to have an attractive and competitive offer to secure top talent in this tough recruitment market. And we don't want just any talent, we want best fit talent. So those are people who share our vision, are ambitious, purpose-driven, and caring. We wanted to also broaden our reach as much as possible to be an attractive employer for prospects from the corporate world and sectors outside of charity industry. And finally, we wanted our EVP to be a reflection of the amazing team and the culture that we already have. So we want our EVP to resonate with our current staff and provide connection, clarity, and shared ambition. So the key really here is that as you develop your own EVP, consider your existing staff and your potential staff. So the core values of the EVP remain same for both cohorts, but you may just need to diversify the offerings underneath them to be attractive to all groups. Now, in terms of our EVP project, there are 2 core parts that I'll share today. There is the EVP itself. So this is the promise that we make to the employees and the benefits that they receive in exchange for working for us. And then there is the employer brand. So this is another really important part. So this is how we show up to the market to attract, retain, and motivate talent. So these 2 components are really an important takeaway that I'd like to highlight to you all today, is that when you start to work on your EVP, engage your marketing team, right, to make sure that you're leveraging the offering that you've created to renew or even promote your employer brand. The candidates now, they not only want to know what do I get out of a job before they apply, but they actually want to know and they want a preview of what it will look like if they worked for your organization. So the more that you can illustrate your employer brand, you close the gap of how a job or a company looks to the reality once someone actually starts. Now for us, here is our project map, which really gives you a sense of the effort and the work we put into this project over the last 18 months. We've done, feel welcome to screen grab this, by the way. It's a really useful template. We've done a lot of research to understand the recruitment market, deep dive into trends, for example, the impact of post-COVID on ways of working, particularly working from home. And also we wanted to understand the external perceptions of working in the charity sector. It was important for us to engage our staff on this project. So we established an EVP development board, and this was made up of 6 subcommittees made up of dedicated staff across the organisation. And each subcommittee explored a distinct part of the EVP, which I'll go into in a moment. Now, after conducting surveys and focus groups and hearing from our committee teams, we distilled what SCHF needs from our people to succeed and what was most important to our employees. So the key learnings here that I would recommend for your journey is really take the time to understand the external environment around you and what your employees want, what the organization wants, and then you can collectively define your unique leading standards. So just for context, out of this project map, that research phase, so from milestone 1 to 5, that took approximately 12 months. So it's really important to deep dive into understanding before creating. And then we got onto the fun stuff of the strategy and the creative over the remaining 6 months of the project. So I'll jump into the actual EVP itself. So when we were designing our EVP and finding our unique selling point or our USP, we needed to identify that sweet spot between what SCHF needs and what our employees are looking for. And this is the exact framework that we use to build towards our USP. So when we considered all the elements within this pyramid, we discovered that our core selling point was providing agency and impact. So for us, the agency to forge a career, working flexibly in ways that suit your personal needs while meeting your role requirements, working collaboratively with strong systems and processes within the organization, and the agency to learn and grow and to ensure you take your health and well-being as seriously as you take your job. And of course, the impact that we make by being all in for kids' health and the meaning making that provides us. So to support our USP and to develop a landmark EVP, we recognize through this work that we actually need a more human-centric approach and integrated approach. And based on the work of the EVP development board, we identified that there are 4 key areas that we wanted to focus our employment offer to, therefore leading to our EVP features. So those leading features or standards flowed into these key EVP pillars, which is terms and conditions of employment. So that was all focused on leave and benefits and flexible work, beliefs and social connections focused on well-being and social connection and values, reward and recognition focused on remuneration, makeup, compensation, and our recognition programs, learning and development. And lastly, a pillar that you don't typically see in EVPs, but was a great category for us to give importance to throughout this project was the systems, processes, and technology. So this pillar really focused on what are the tools, technology, and actual processes within our organization to enable our ways of working. And these 6 areas are actually what each of our subcommittees have been working on throughout the project. So we actually developed 6 core themes, which encompasses our existing and our evolved offerings and key themes so that they can transcend any changes to specific offers within each theme. I'll explain what that means. So for example, even if our recognition program may change, a team to treasure will always remain a key EVP benefit with a different program underneath the theme. So what that means is it allows all the creative to be relevant for a really long time. And really importantly to note here is that these themes already existed within our culture and our ways of working, so it feels really true to us, but it's just never been articulated in this way before. We also developed some core values for our EVP, so we defined what the things are that really make it special. And then the next part of the project was to focus on the employer brand. So we've got the gist of the theme of the benefits, how we're going to categorize them, but now we move into the employer branding side. So we actually worked with an external agency called Sunny Side Up to develop a new employer brand strategy and to develop all the beautiful accompanying assets to enhance and showcase our employer brand. So what's key here, and I think this is a really useful slide as well, is to articulate that throughout the employee journey, where the employer brand is broken down into. So then that way, as we developed our EVP assets and our messaging, how do we tailor it to each stage and each experience? So we developed a suite of resources that really accentuated the SCHF voice, and that included a complete revamp of our careers website and our LinkedIn Live page. We developed new copy for all of our job posts and the way we speak to the market, rehauled our induction plans and developed all new onboarding collateral, even redesigned our policies, which, the tone that they were speaking to staff before wasn't really relevant or in line with our employer brand anymore. So we redid our policies and the tone, and we developed these beautiful cover pages. We built some structure around new starter and recognition announcements internally, externally. We developed our very first employee film, which is our EVP film. We created a whole host of staff imagery and articulated really beautiful EVP statements and messaging, which I'll show you shortly. So we developed a recruitment line, which is literally just this. And this was a natural extension of our brand, our organizational brand, and how we talk about ourselves. So what the importance there to do that was to make sure that our external messaging is said with one powerful voice, and our employer brand and our organizational plan are really tied together closely. We developed what we're calling a chant. So these are a series of descriptors to encourage people to consider SCHF as their next employer. This is actually Jonathan, one of our team members, and one of our first campaign images. So last year, we actually also launched our new brand campaign. So this is unrelated to EVP, our organizational brand campaign. So that features the brand campaign features our donors standing in front of our mural in Harmony Park, which represents the kids we support. So we have a donor, and behind them is the kids that we support. So for our EVP, we wanted to have, the idea here was that we have staff standing behind the kids. So they are our purpose, and these images put our impact front and center. So it's really beautifully tied together with our external brand. Then we developed our EVP promise, and this is some language that we use to assist with recruitment. And this part of the project really culminates in our employee film. So this is our hero video that I'll play shortly, and it showcases who we are, how we work, and our purpose. And the core here is that we really wanted to smash the stigma of the charity sector and showcase our professional working environments and our strive for excellence.
See you soon, unstoppable change makers.
So everyone in that film was an employee They were filmed at our offices, or even the homes. We had staff put up their hand to do the work from home shots. So it's all a true reflection of our staff and our workspaces. We also then developed 4 Vox Pop style films, which are feature interviews with our staff members talking about why they love working for us. And then so we've got the EVP benefits, we've got the messaging, we've got the creative, and now it came time to the rollout. So building our EVP from the ground up and creating those assets was a huge job, but we're finally ready to actually get it out there to the market. So what we did is we developed quite a comprehensive launch plan, and this was done in consultation with our executive leadership team, our senior leadership team, and key business units like the marketing team. And this included a formal communication plan, a social media plan, creation of media releases and award submissions, all to support the staggered implementation of our EVP and our benefits. Now, we chose to stagger our implementation for 2 key reasons. One was to ensure that the people and culture team had the capacity to deliver on those, and 2, that our benefits are the best that they could be when they were ready to be rolled out to our staff. So we wanted to make sure we had a longer term continuity of our campaign. So now that we've explored some of the details of our EVP and our employer brand, I wanted to share with you some of our greatest learnings to hopefully help any of you should you wish to develop your own. So starting off an EVP project can be really, really daunting, and it certainly was for me personally. But what I learned is that you really need broader organizational support to deliver that. So you need to have critical to this is you need to have support from your board, from your CEO, and from senior leaders before you even start embarking on this journey. You need to make sure that it's driven by your staff. So having their advocacy and championship is really paramount. After all, the whole EVP is for them. You've got to make it manageable. So there's nothing worse than over promising and under delivering. So if you're working alone or within a small team, make it small, right? Break it down into smaller steps and really set yourself up for success. Communicate and then communicate again. So this is a great theory that our CEO, Christina Keneally, taught me, which I'd love to share with you all today. So follow the vomit principle to keep everyone engaged. So that sounds really gross, but what it means is that you keep saying something over and over until you feel like you could be sick. People, of course, don't start listening the first time, but by the 7th time, aka when you want to vomit, they actually finally realize what's going on, their ears prick up. Have a good foundation. So if you don't have a culture of buy-in and openness to change, introducing an EVP will be a challenge. And finally, your EVP should really be an evolution of your current values and culture. So really be true to who you are as an organization. So we've had some incredible feedback from staff and candidates of our EVP and benefits and campaign. There's always room for improvement. So if we did it again, we'd make sure that we have more structure in our subcommittees. So from the get-go, one of our key learnings is that we really should have had clear KPIs and project plans and templates at the establishment of the EVP development board, just so that the project doesn't stall. We'd have more frequent updates to staff following that vomit principle. And we'd also have stronger consultation with our working groups or those subcommittees when we actually developed the workings of the policies behind the benefits and those frameworks. So some useful stats that I wanted to share with you today on how we've seen the EVP have an impact within our organization so far, and we have heaps to go, is that we've seen our employee engagement significantly improve. So it was already really good at 80%, but since the launch, it's improved to 84%, which is an amazing result in a short time. The salary and benefits category, actually specifically since our last survey and since launching the EVP, it increased by 14% in just 6 months. Annualized turnover has gone down by over 10% over the years since launching, which is incredible. And one of the most exciting impact or stat that I can share with you today is that our LinkedIn job views has grown exponentially, right? So as the title of the webinar is, a Killer EVP skyrocketed our job views So we went pre-EVP, we had an average of about 72 views per job ad. Since launch, it's increased to about 1,893. And this is a real strong reflection of our campaign. So if you're keen to develop your own EVP and you don't know where to start, please feel welcome to use that project plan template or any of the information given you today. But here are also some specific ideas. It's a comprehensive list of what we actually considered in our research phase and explored in our journey, if you'd like some ideas. And if you want to chat, here are my details. I'm happy to connect and provide some more info in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam, for that enlightening look into the EVP journey at Sydney Children's Hospital Foundation. I think your experience underlines just how important and inspiring a well-crafted EVP can be for the organisation. I like watching it. I couldn't help but feel motivated, and I'm like, oh wow, I want to learn more about this organisation and the people. It must have been fun for your team to go through it as well, be part of the filming. Work is about experiences, and that would have brought the team together over the last 18 months as well. And so proud to have that out and about now.
Yeah, definitely.
As well. And Mary, I know it's not Q&A yet, but we've got questions, and I just want to remind those that are attending today, if you do have questions, please put in the Q&A tab, and we will definitely address that after our next speaker. So now let's pivot to a slightly different perspective. It's my pleasure to welcome Lauren Howard from Monash Talent. Lauren will zoom in on how EVPs can sharpen our approach to attracting the bright and ambitious talent entering the workforce. So Lauren, over to you.
Thanks, Kai, for the introduction, and thanks for having me today. And I guess, firstly, congratulations to Mariam and the team. That's so impressive in terms of the rollout of that EVP. Prior to working in higher education, I've been on the other side in terms of P&C teams, really trying to build and roll out that EVP, and it's no mean feat to bring all of the stakeholders together and kind of get to that point of having such an inspiring kind of visual campaign to launch. So really happy to be joining you today to, I guess, I think it's a nice flow on from Mariam's presentation to really narrow down into how EVP can be applied to engaging graduate and student talent. So I'll bring up my presentation, just one moment. I'll just share my screen. So I guess my team at Monash Talent is a division of Monash University, and we're a centralised solution within the university to really focus on connecting industry with student and graduate talent for a range of opportunities. So whether organisations are engaging students for internships, part-time or casual opportunities while they're studying, through to graduate programs and entry-level opportunities. So I guess throughout the information I'll take you through today, I kind of refer to the graduate value proposition and engaging grads, but we're really talking about all students from their entry into their university experience all the way through to graduation and as they enter and become alumni. So for those not based in Victoria, I think we've got people nationally on the call today who aren't as familiar with Monash. We're the largest university in Australia. We've got over 80,000 current students and a network of 400,000 or so alumni. So from our perspective, massive talent pool to be tapping into. And I guess there are, economic and generational kind of impacts that really influence the best way to interact and engage with that segment of the market compared to perhaps more professional hires when we're considering EVP and our employer brand. So I think, one of the themes that we start to see when organisations are talking about employer brand is a shift towards personalisation, and really in that execution of your EVP, starting to look at beyond the overall company employer brand, what are the segments of talent within that we're targeting within the market. And for a lot of organisations, that is really now emerging talent. So as I mentioned, kind of students who might feed into internship programs and pipeline for graduate and entry level roles, or really early brand awareness for people who, they may not enter your organisation as a graduate, but potentially once they've done an entry level position somewhere for a couple of years, they may be looking at their next step. And if they've had exposure to your brand within their university environment, they're really going to be, you're one step ahead in terms of brand recognition and consideration in terms of their application. So within the early years recruitment world, we find employers are really not only needing to address that EVP, but also elements of their brand that are important to grads. So why should a graduate join your organisation over another? Why join a graduate program over an entry-level position? So a lot of graduate programs might be, 2-year rotational experience. Why is that of benefit compared to applying for an entry-level role? And how does the proposition align and reach the target audience? So with our current students, I guess we're predominantly talking to Gen Z. We do have more mature age students, postgrads, masters, people going back to university to take on a different career path. But I guess for the purpose of a more streamlined approach, we'll be talking predominantly to Gen Z, and there's some kind of interesting behaviour and statistics out there. We're talking about that audience who are now kind of within that 14 to 28 years age group. So I'll do a bit of a deep dive into Gen Z in the coming slides. And touching on why EVP or your graduate value proposition is important, and I think Mariam tied this up quite nicely. So employer brand links directly to your employee experience, engagement and retention of employees. So, the value proposition comes directly from, what keeps your people in your business. So it's really linked to the full employee life cycle. And we know that 50% of workers say that they won't work for a company with a bad reputation. We know that a strong employer brand and value proposition reduces cost per hire. So recruitment costs not only drop, but statistics show that they drop by roughly 40%. So in other words, when your employer brand is strong, your recruiter experience has less friction, and there's less effort in engaging candidates to apply for job opportunities. When making a decision on where to apply for a job, 84% of job seekers say the reputation of a company is important to them, and it can take up to 50 touch points before a candidate will consider applying for a job. So that could come from university, different social channels. Your consumer brand is intrinsically linked to your employer brand. So we need to consider that if you're putting a job advertisement or an opportunity in front of a candidate and it's the first time that they've seen your brand, it's going to take a lot longer for them to be engaged or work out whether they're a great fit for your company and it's a position that they want to apply for. 50% of workers say they won't work for a company with a bad reputation, and 56% of graduate employers increased their intake in 2023. So huge increase in terms of the number of opportunities out there for graduates, competition for graduates, and we're coming off quite an interesting time with COVID. So 2022 saw border closures, the Great Resignation, skills shortages, and low unemployment. And 2020 saw less graduates enrolling. So if you think about that experience through 2020, 2021, with lockdowns, lower number of graduates enrolling, we're now reaching a period where graduates in market for entry-level opportunities, it's really competitive to access that group of talent. So getting to know Gen Z, I think a lot of people, kind of find this generational insight quite interesting in terms of behaviour, and I guess it kind of links, you know, social preferences and behaviour through to job-seeking behaviour. So the students of our world today who are currently at school and university are the children of Generation X, the cohort that follows Generation Y, and born between 1995 and 2009, so they're Generation Z. They're the largest generation ever, comprising around 20% of Australia's population and almost 30% of the world's population. So there's globally almost 2 billion in Gen Z. I was reading the other day, Gen Alpha, who follows, they're going to be an even larger generation in terms of numbers, and they will be, you know, the next generation that we're considering in terms of job-seeking behaviour. So in terms of characteristics, instantly gratified, so access to information is a given, but can be overwhelming. It's kind of that always on environment where, whether it's mobile, advertising, you know, through school, they're on tablets, technology, there's loads of information, but really cutting through that information is quite challenging. Statistically, they're the most educated generation ever, so 1 in 2 are expected to have a university degree, where Gen X is 1 in 4. Digital permeates all aspects of their lifestyle and relationships, whether that's positive or negative. So from the earliest years, they're exposed to internet, social networks and mobile systems. They're visual, so interestingly, while Google has 3.5 million searches per day, almost 5 billion videos are watched on YouTube every day. So we have an emerging generation, many who are opting to watch a video summarising an issue rather than reading an article discussing it. So when we start to think about preference of consuming information, job content, EVP, the preference is heavily to be consuming that via video rather than perhaps that traditional job advertising format. They're mobile. So today's school leaver is expected to have 18 jobs across 6 careers. They're globally conscious. So through technology, globalisation and cultural diversity, fashion, food, online entertainment, social trends are more global than ever. And they are social, so they're shaped by their peers and they're connected to their network 24/7. Sometimes that can have negative impact. Research shows that 1/4 of students have been bullied via social media, text message or emails. So we're really dealing with a generation who are always on and dealing with the positive impacts of tech, but also some of the negative impacts that come with that. They value individual expression and avoid labels. So I'm going to go into some of the insights that we've gathered from employers who are recruiting in the graduate market, and then also on the other side, what students are telling us. So employers are telling us that communications to students get lost in the sea of competitor ads. So employers are looking for a way to cut through the volume of options to students. If you look at the traditional job advertising platforms, you know, there are over 2,000 graduate roles currently on Seek, even more on LinkedIn. And I know when I look at some of the internal platforms within Monash where, you know, graduate job platforms kind of feed into the universities, some of those platforms have over 1,000 jobs on them at the moment. So while they're, you know, awesome resources to gain information around different organisations and their specific graduate programs, some of the challenge with that when we start to get to volume is it's quite difficult to differentiate one ad from another. Everything's kind of looks the same, formatted the same. So, you know, companies are really looking at how they don't get lost in their competitor opportunities. Finding the right graduates and processing the volume of applications is a significant pain point. you know, we're talking to industry partners who are receiving hundreds, sometimes thousands of applications for maybe less than 100 graduate roles when we're kind of, you know, working in that enterprise space. And having that volume represents a pain point in terms of, you know, if the wrong fit is ascertained from those applications, we kind of lead to graduates pulling out, so a lot of reneges before they start, or turnover once they're in the organisation if the fit is wrong. Employers find it challenging to articulate opportunities in a way that students understand and relate to. So that's where, you know, some of those insights around how information is consumed, so perhaps video rather than written ads, or, you know, what is the language and the value proposition and selling point to a graduate. You know, some employers are making assumptions that their brand might be perceived really well, but they might be dealing with a cohort that have just come out of school and they've never had the reason to come across their brand in the market before. So it's really looking at it differently and making sure that information is presented specifically for students. SMEs, so our small and medium businesses, note that they're easily overshadowed by larger and well-known organisations or those with a strong consumer brand. And employers place importance on in-person connection and engagement. So they're really wanting to stand out from competition. Earlier in the student journey, they place importance on engagement via events and things, which are starting to bounce back post-COVID. But, you know, there's that balance between, you know, digital interaction through video interviews, chatbots and things, and trying to make that personalised and balance that with some in-person connection. Employers are investing significantly, so we know that graduate attraction and selection is expensive. So 110,000 average total selection spend per employer. And, you know, this is coming from AAGE, who publish their employer survey every year. So if you work in the talent or graduate recruitment space, would absolutely encourage you to tap into the AAGE resources. They publish an employer survey and a candidate survey every year. So I guess it's kind of noting that we're probably talking to the larger organisation spend when we look at this. Those small to medium businesses in particular do not have the budget to be spending on marketing and attraction. And I guess that's where some of the challenge starts to display as well and lift in relation to those smaller businesses having some challenges cutting through that noise. I would say, you know, there are a lot of things that you can do that don't require budget, which, you know, in terms of employee advocacy, some of your free channels like LinkedIn, you know, some of those really authentic methods of storytelling have no cost involved, and it can actually be quite powerful without needing a really produced or expensive campaign. But yeah, what we're seeing is attraction and selection of graduates is really expensive. So making sure that messaging lands and the right candidates are selected is really important to industry. On the other hand, what are students telling us? Students struggle to evaluate the breadth of opportunity available to them. They view advertised jobs, but they want to know more about the organisation and what the position entails. So our role is to really bring that to life for them. They want to access an employer's vision and mission statement and know why a company exists and what it hopes to accomplish. So purpose is really important. They're interested in what ethical practices the business engages in, so diversity, social responsibility, and employee wellbeing. And following this slide, I'll talk to you about some of the elements of an employer's culture and organisation that are important to graduates in their job search. And, you know, diversity and inclusion and providing that kind of environment to employees is now expected. So it's no longer, really high up in the list of priority when we get those survey responses back from students. But if we talk about the things that will turn graduates off, it's right up the top. So it's really expected now that corporate social responsibility is integrated into all organisations. Students' trust reviews from current or past graduates and employees. So again, those kind of graduate platforms are now implementing reviews from current and previous graduates. There are also platforms like Glassdoor and Seek who promote employee reviews. And whether or not your company is engaging in those platforms to promote reviews, you'll typically find, if you Google working at Monash, for example, one of the first things that come up in that Google result is Glassdoor reviews and Seek reviews. So it's something that I think all organisations need to have a look at in terms of auditing, where does your employer brand and messaging sit? And some of that, you've got a lot of control over in terms of messaging through careers pages and social and so forth. But I think students are very savvy around that, and they're really looking for reviews specifically from, people who have worked in those roles previously. And we find like testimonials, again, video content from graduates or interns who have had a really awesome experience with an organisation are really powerful. And students want to know their employment conditions, so they're very aware of entitlements, compensation, flexibility, work from home. So again, this came from the AAGE candidate survey. So they survey around 4,000 graduates across multiple states and universities. And what comes out in terms of the top things that students were looking for last year was career progression, company culture, and the quality of training and development. So as you can see, we kind of touched on that. Inclusion, equity, and diversity is kind of down the list, and flexible work opportunities. Sometimes you'd expect that to be higher up. I think if it's lacking, then it definitely turns graduates off from applying. What we're starting to see with some of our insights coming through from our students is this year that job security and compensation and benefits are starting to climb up the priority list. And I think that, makes sense with the economic climate, cost of living, rental costs, especially for students. When we think about international students, the, impact on visa changes and challenges in securing work, it makes sense for some of those economic factors to start to impact what's important. And lastly, just to touch on the Monash Talent brand and campaign solutions, depending on your organisation, over the past few years, a lot of companies now are in the fortunate position where they have dedicated talent brand teams or someone who is focused on EVPs. So it might be that you've already got great content like, what Mariam showed us. We work with that level of organisation all the way through to businesses who really don't know how to start to articulate their value proposition to students. So some of these, tips from today you might be able to take away and implement yourselves. Otherwise, these are the kind of steps that we take you through in terms of articulating employer brand proposition and making recommendations on how to potentially tweak your value proposition for the student population. Try and bring the program to life, and the ability for students to envision themselves in the organisation. So again, touching on things like video to try and bring, whether it's your hiring teams, your hiring managers, your mentors or your graduates, bringing the program to life and allowing students to really position themselves in the organisation. Trying to really be open and authentic and genuine in the messaging. giving graduates confidence they're applying for the right role. If they're not confident, we're kind of finding there are, you know, at the moment, organisations are recruiting and hiring in April for graduates starting in 2025. If those graduates aren't confident that they've really, you know, made the right decision who they're working for, there's a very real risk that they're going to continue to apply for other opportunities and keep their options open. So we kind of find that, yeah, towards the end of the year, those reneges start to come to life. So what can you do to make graduates have that confidence that they've made the right decision? We know your audience, so we align the attraction strategy with target students and demographics and use channels such as social media, events, digital screens, on-campus channels that we know that students will respond to. And we really encourage organisations to identify leaders and current employers who can advocate for the program. The campaign build and execution can be anything from content creation, so video, testimonials, landing pages and employer profile, through to delivery of the EVP content through those channels. So we look at, I guess, our whole Monash student population as our talent pool, and we can segment that if there's, you know, preferences. Some organisations still, you know, quite technical around degree qualifications that they're looking for. Some not so concerned about degree now and more around, you know, skills and qualities and broader experience that students have. So we help to segment that targeting within the Monash pool, and again, execute via the university channels. So, you know, most of the universities will have these kind of channels. So again, you know, if you're dialing in with a team from Sydney, for example, you know, a lot of the universities will have, you know, similar kind of functions where they can help facilitate the execution of that message. But I guess, yeah, really encourage you to look at your EVP content and think of it from the lens of a student or a graduate compared to an experienced hire. They're really going to consume and take that messaging on, you know, in a slightly different way.
Definitely. Okay, thank you, Lauren, for shedding light on the graduate recruitment landscape and the pivotal role that an EVP has in engaging the next generation of talent. Certainly found some of those stats. You know, I've seen it a few times, but every time I see it, I'm pleasantly surprised. So whether it's understanding Gen Z or crafting messages that resonate, it's clear that a strong EVP is key to not just attracting that talent, but also retaining top-notch talent. So now that we've had an in-depth look at the subject from both Mariam and Lauren, we've got a bit of time to do some questions, and I can see there's some questions from the audience. Any questions that we don't get through today, we will, you know, get in touch with our speakers, and we'll get those questions and we'll send it out as part of our post-webinar communications. Okay, so I've got a few questions here, but I think I'll try to ask the ones that we've got here from the audience. So Matthew has asked, how would you suggest a growing business source graduates with specialized set of skills from within a broader generic qualification? Are there any tools that you can suggest? I'm going to say that's for Lauren.
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think if you're thinking about generic qualifications, I'm probably thinking about like technology or engineering or science, where students are really doing a broad kind of program at the beginning of their degree, and then looking to specialise later on in their experience. So I think, you know, certainly for students, what we encourage our industry partners to do is kind of bring to life what those career paths might look like. So if it's quite a specialised field that they're looking to go into, whether that be, you know, I know things like renewables and sustainability and those kind of sectors are really growing. I think where industry can really benefit is kind of positioning that kind of messaging early on in the students' experience, maybe offering them like an internship or something that will really expose them to that kind of organisation before they get to the point where they really need to specialise and they're kind of in their 5th year and wondering where to go. So I think it's around that early engagement with those.
Yeah, and I think there's plenty of opportunities for employers to get involved in that internship. That's actually how I got my first job post uni, was through an internship, and then I ended up working for the charity. So, you know, it's interesting. You can capture them a bit earlier. Mariam, I've got a question for you, but just before that, I just want to respond to another question around receiving a copy of the presentation decks. Yes, they will be available. This person's asking because they're in the middle of working through the implementation of the new EVP. And I guess some of the points that you've both raised would be super useful. So I can confirm we will be sharing that out as part of our post-webinar communications. Now, this question is for either of you, but Mariam, I might go to you first, which is in terms of an EVP to attract graduates, right? Would you think you should create just the one and use it for all, or do you think it needs a special one to target graduates? So almost like an offshoot of the main one, or do you keep it as one?
Yeah. So our EVP currently is targeting all groups. So the way we've designed our benefits, so we had in that EVP development board, we had the 6 subcommittees and we had 30 people across all subcommittees of staff. So that the reason we had so many people involved out of like 120 staff was that we had that diversity of voice. So we had people who were, you know, entry-level coordinators, we had senior execs in those committees. So we wanted to make sure that there was enough diversity in each group to put forward ideas that are attractive to many different categories, whether it's age, whether it's career, whether it's whatever it is, culture. That was our thought process. So let's get as much people involved as we can to allow for that. As an extension of this, so we have a huge volunteer program at SCHF. We have over 5,000 volunteers now. So they support the activation of our events externally, like City to Surf, and the walks that we do. Our volunteer lead is developing a VVP, which is a volunteer value proposition as an extension of this. So in that way, she's articulating what are the benefits that volunteers get for working for us. So it is worthwhile having those nuanced extensions, but we believe that what we've developed does attract various points of career.
And just in the interest of time, I've got one more question that I'd like to ask each of you, and I guess it's a little bit of, you know, looking into the future. So we've been talking about EVPs, and I feel like in my time working, it was a lot simpler when we first started, and I think maybe the way that employees viewed work, it was and the relationship, maybe the power dynamic. I know there's been a shift since COVID. Depending on where you sit, some people might think there's too much power on one side or the other. But how do you see EVPs evolving into the future? Where do you see it going? Right? Is it going to get bigger and better? You know, is it going to sort of, is this a thing that's only going to be available for a few years and then recedes? Mariam, maybe you go first.
From the perspective of SCHF, like this rollout is over 2 years. So we have a whole host of benefits. And from the beginning, when we looked at implementation, we are implementing it over 2 years to recognize that this isn't a hot topic that we need to address right now because we want to bring in talent right now. This is an ongoing thing. So the role of people and culture has evolved so much from being you know, facilitating people processes to now having a true seat at an organizational strategy perspective. So now what I'm seeing is when we're talking about our organizational brand, our employer brand is feeding into that so strongly. And that's new, that's very recent. But I think that will absolutely continue. And everyone here who is in a HR role, I'm sure, can understand that how we are being looked at or reached, you know, leveraged or asked questions is very different to the questions I was getting a couple of years ago in a different, in a different stage in my career and role. So I think this is definitely ongoing. Absolutely.
Great. And Lauren, what's your take on the future of EVPs?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree that, you know, I think attraction and retention of staff for most businesses is kind of listed as the #1 risk or priority in terms of sustainability. businesses. So I think that really puts EVP, at an even higher priority. I think the impact of technology on talent acquisition and branding will be really interesting. Like we're, looking at some AI tools that integrate with tech stacks for talent acquisition teams that help with a tone of voice, personalisation of messaging, candidate experience. If a candidate has a poor experience with your brand throughout a recruitment process, it taints your consumer brand as well. So I think, candidate experience and personalisation is kind of a hot topic out there in the market as well. So I think EVP is just such an interesting mix between that people and marketing element.
And I think that generational shift as well is going to play a big role. Obviously, the personal branding seems to be even more important now than used to be, but people do tie in their own personal brands with their employer brands. And so, they want to be working for someone that is purpose driven. And it's sort of, you talked about the fit. People are asking that question a lot more. It's not just a means to get a job and pay a bill. People are really thinking like, what is my purpose? Right? There is, I think today's generation, or all of us in the workforce, have more access to information than we've ever had before. And with that access to information, it's knowledge, but it's also choice, right? And with choice means, well, I think employees do have to work a little bit harder to make sure that they do stand out. And I think that they were key points that you had both brought up. Look, as we wrap up today's session, I just want to extend my sincerest gratitude to both Mariam and Lauren, and all of you actually, for joining us on such a vibrant discussion on EVPs. Look out for an email from us in the coming days with the slides from today's webinars, along with other information on how you can be involved and support, for example, the Sydney Children's Hospital Foundation through their Workplace Giving program, and also to explore Monash Talent's EVP services. So, of course, at Accurate here, you can always come to us because we're here to help you make sure that every new hire starts off on the right foot. You can engage us through our background screening services. But once again, thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to having you at future events. Have a nice Thursday.
Thank you, Kai. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.